Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a government side that had a Chan, but at the same time didn't have a Chan. Because they had a Chan as a team member, but at the same time they didn't have Chan's influence in any of their arguments. Because we see that all of their arguments were not according to Chan's ability. We see that because of this, ladies and gentlemen, we are certain that we can win this debate. So having said that, let's move on directly into today's debate and today's debate matters. Okay? So the first thing, we believe that today's debate was primarily about, well, it primarily became about three aspects. First off, the purpose of education, indeed. And second, meritocracy. And finally, last but not least, the equality issue. So basically, the poor students, they can't get debate education from, say, NC and SNT. And that's somehow a serious social problem that we have to address. So let's first off look at the first issue, okay? So meritocracy, okay? So they talked about how specs do not reflect meritocracy because, okay, for instance, in the case of internship, your father might be super rich and be in the position of corporate executive officer so that maybe he can get his child into an internship service and let him get the experience. Now, first off, ladies and gentlemen, if you consider things that way, if you want to talk about those extreme cases, then why in the status quo wouldn't you ban sons from getting into the corporations of their fathers, ladies and gentlemen? We see that these kind of social inequalities exist in the society anyway, and their policy does nothing to solve it in the first place. No, thank you, sir. Please sit down. Anyways, so the poor, and then, okay, so basically about meritocracy. And second off, we see that it does show meritocracy. Specs do reflect meritocracy in the sense that they show your abilities, right? In the case of TESTAT, if you take TESTAT, it basically means if you got over this certain score in the competition, it basically means that you know this much economics. And if we see that there is an honorable adjudicator that is related to economics over there and TESTAT anyway. No, thank you, sir. We see that there are various activities related to your dreams and your field of career, ladies and gentlemen. In this case, if you partake or participate in these activities, we say that it shows that you have some interest, you have a strong interest for that specific activity. We see that their characterization of specs was simply an extreme one at best, and that does not fit most of the cases of specs, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we believe that their point about meritocracy simply fails. But more importantly, though, ladies and gentlemen, we see that even if, ladies and gentlemen, for instance, they might talk about how there are differences between, 수상 level. So basically, 금상, the rich kids get the 금상, or like, for example, the poor kids get the, 은상, or like the lower class levels. We believe that they might talk about this, but even in this case, we say that that's not really a problem. Because we say that, so you're equipped, please. So basically, we see that even in those cases, the participation in the competition or the spec itself is a very good measure of showing how diligent or how a person is passionate in his form of career or jobs. And we see that that's something that they completely ignored. So we believe that under this premise, meritocracy is preserved better under our system, something that they did not understand nor answer to sufficiently in today's case. No, thank you, sir. Okay, so let's talk about equality. So basically, we see that under the current PART administration, education and welfare systems are improving. After-school systems are improving. And then okay, we have another TESTAT expert over there who knows about this, right? We see that there are every measures being taken by the government, ladies and gentlemen, to actually help improve the situation of inequality in terms of educational chances, ladies and gentlemen. So we say that these methods are enough, and it was their duty to prove to us why that method is not enough. They just said, okay, these poor kids can't go to SNT, for example, or KDF and get debate education. First off, that's not what you can expect from the government in the first place, right? We can't expect the government to send poor kids to Harvard and stuff, right? We can only expect the government to give the basic forms of the social education necessary to live in a society, and we say that beyond that is not really the government's duty nor concern. So we don't think that the equality point in their constructive case stood in the first place. And okay, so basically let's move on to the purpose of education issue.
You're bringing one, sir.
So basically, actually, sir, yes.
So I'm not rich enough to apply for TESTAT. How is that fair for me?
That's not true because TESTAT costs like 27,000 won.
That's too expensive.
One
expensive.
That's not really too expensive. Like your yongdong's that much. Anyways, so let's move on. So the purpose of education. So basically, we see that they talked about three purposes of education. To help help students actualize their dreams, equality, and they talk about students are being forced to compete for the sake of getting into colleges. 3 responses, okay? First off, it goes against their stance because they're talking about how the purpose of education is to help students actualize their dreams, right? In this case, they shouldn't be going against private education because private education is indeed one of the ways helping the students academically excel so that they get their dreams. So that was a self-contradiction there, number 1.
Sir?
Number 2, no, thank you, sir. I took your POI, you're cooked it. Second off, we see that you can't have 100,000 diplomats in Korea. That's why there is a competition between students to get the jobs, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we see that the university's role here is very important. Because we see, ladies and gentlemen, that universities have the sanctified role to supply the society with students that they think are the best. And we see that through the admissions officer system interlinked with the universities, they already have the incentive to choose the best students anyway. They talked about how meritocracy does not imply. We see that it does under this sense because they always have the incentive to choose better students for their universities and for the competitiveness of their universities. So therefore, under that systematic thing, the private education part of their argumentations do not stand. And also the social harms. Now here they implied how teachers are all fundamentally frauds when they write, oh, this student was so excellent in the report cards. Okay? First off, ladies and gentlemen, we see that teachers are there for evaluating students, and that's why they should have a say in how a student is like. Other than grades, ladies and gentlemen. That's why, in the case of report cards, teachers can write evaluations, something that they did not really address or sufficiently support in their second constructive. So having said that, because their third argument was basically a repetition, we're going to move on to our third constructive about the social implications. So basically, this is organization of the past argument. So basically, under the system of democracy, we say that the government must always be able to logically persuade and prove to the citizens why their policy will bring justice or benefits to the society. We see that they did not prove to us a fundamental harm in the society in the sense that, okay, they mentioned very vaguely about how poor students are being disadvantaged, but there are measures to improve that. We see that there are no more things that can be done in the status quo that can be effective right now. And second off, we see that the conflict between interest groups happens. Social backlashes happen whenever the government intervenes because it is bound to go against an interest group. In this case, universities or schools applying admissions officer system, ladies and gentlemen. In this sense, we say that the government is there to mediate issues, right? The government is there to mediate and make these people understand that a certain policy will solve a certain social harm. They did not do this. For these reasons, we're very, very proud to oppose.